Welcome to the 2026 Celebration of Preservation Awards, presented by the Cleveland Restoration Society and the American Institute of Architects Cleveland chapter. We look forward to this joint program every year as we recognize the preservation projects that transform our communities. Tonight's program is made possible by the many fantastic companies that sponsor this event. Big thanks to WR Restoration, our parapet sponsor, for their support of tonight's program. To our capital sponsors, heartfelt thanks for your generous contribution. We are so grateful to our many pillar and cornice level sponsors who help make tonight's program possible. The 2026 Celebration of Preservation Awards honors outstanding historic preservation projects across the region. Many of these projects stand out thanks to the talented craftspeople who have developed the skills required to restore intricate masonry and terracotta details, replicate historic tin tiles, carve wood corner boards and rosettes, and repair century-old stained glass. These skilled trades ensure that preservation remains authentic and true to the character of historic places. Historic preservation stands at the intersection where architecture, art, history, and community meet. Each award-winning project reflects this connection, showing how craftsmanship and commitment to heritage protect the cultural legacy of our region. The CRS-AIA jury reviewed many projects and selected those that are the most significant and representative of the value of historic preservation. The jury chose those projects that embody the criteria established by AIA Cleveland and the Cleveland Restoration Society. The criterion used included the quality of work, adherence to recognized preservation standards, risk factors, strategic implications to promote preservation in the region, innovative preservation, financing or partnering techniques, and the impact of the nominated property on the larger community. So please, join us in recognizing and congratulating our winners. The Honorable Mention Award for Small Commercial Renovation goes to The Nest on Madison.
Heather Rudge with Historic Preservation Group. We were the historic preservation consultants.
I'm Jim Makito from Neighborhood Drummer. I was the owner and developer on the project. So the building is located in the Birdtown Historic District of Lakewood, which is at the east end of Lakewood. The building was built in 1918. We do not know who the architect on it was. We do know that the builder was a gentleman by the name of Anton Schnanikon. He built it as a furniture store. It had a number of other different uses, and most recently it was a series of grocery stores. When we saw this building, the first thing I said when I walked, just the natural beauty of that building, as in bad of a shape it was always there. It just kind of needed to be, awakened. If you look at the facade, that awning that was on there was just pretty grotesque, not to be too inflammatory with my words, but you could see the old storefront transoms that they had covered.
And we had historic photos that were in the period of significance that we used to put the corner entrance back.
The front windows were all the original wood windows, and we restored actually all the windows on the second and third floor facing Madison. They really make the building look and feel kind of how they always have historically. The light you get in there and kind of reimagining how it used to be was great. It's a solid building. They built those things like rocks back in the day.
The first floors where all the refrigerated coolers were and stuff for the grocery stores over time. Those coolers had leaked and the floors were totally rotted out. In that huge space, Jim put all new oak hardwood floors throughout that whole space. It was a major investment.
The state we found it in, there was a big drop ceiling. And so when we were touring the building, I peeled back some of the drop ceiling tiles, the 2-foot by 4-foot tiles, and I saw that underneath there was all the tin ceiling. I didn't realize what shape it was in, but we were down a number of tiles, so we actually had to go get them printed. There's a shop on the east side of Cleveland that actually replicates those tiles. So we went through that process to do that. It's neat to see it in its reimagined, re-energized form, and all the tenants in there have done a great job. And coffee shops obviously are a great way to activate neighborhoods, get people out, meet new people. So we were going to do entertainment. We were going to partner with Tim Frazee, who's the owner, but we ended up just being the landlord. He went on it on his own, and he's had great success there. Again, the second floor, we have small office space. We have everything from estheticians to design groups to financial advisor, insurance guy, a couple consultants, and an architect actually in the space. And then on the third floor, we have a salon. It was designed so that it was an open feeling. It was, all glass, natural light. And that's why we called it the Nest, is we're within Birdtown, and this kind of feels like a safe home, I guess, for lack of a cornier word. Again, espousing that sense of community was of the utmost importance. And so don't be hesitant to embark on the historic preservation process. Embrace it. It's going to be tough. It's going to be challenging, but see it through because it's worth it. Thank you to Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the honorable mention for small commercial renovation.
The Preservation Achievement Award goes to University Circle, Inc. offices at Magnolia House.
Hi, I'm Matt Provolt, Director of Planning and Design at University Circle, Inc., and one of the project managers from the owner's side on this Magnolia project.
Alicia Blonsky, I'm our Chief Place Management Officer at University Circle, Incorporated, owner of the Magnolia House, and my role in the project was overseeing it from the owner's standpoint.
My name is Steve Zanoni. I'm with Project Management Consultants. Our role in the project was as owner's rep.
Steve Jenks with LD Architects as the project manager.
And I'm Dominic Durante, founder and president of LDA Architects, and assisted Steve with this great project.
I'm Marcel Clopton, Director of Pre-Construction for Next Generation Construction.
So our house here on Magnolia Drive was built in 1909, designed by Hubble and Bennis, a famous local firm, for Helen Wade Green and Edward Belden Green. Helen was the great-granddaughter of Jephthah Wade, who donated all of this land in the early 1880s to create what we now know as Wade Park, the Art Museum, and the Wade allotments, within which our house sits. We acquired the house in 1970 and moved in 1971. In the years since that, the building pretty much remained as it was when the Greens left it. We were all kind of working out of bedrooms and partitioned living and dining rooms. The old foyer had a shoddy vestibule built into it for separation of entrance. We had people working in the basement, in the attic, in the carriage house, in the attic of the carriage house. So we were all over the place, and we worked like that for 50 years.
But we had acknowledged for at least 10 years that we'd outgrown the space. We were seeking ways to ensure that we could provide a modern and accessible office space for our employees. And ultimately, through a really engaged board process, we came to the unanimous decision that reinvesting in our historic home was the right decision.
As we did the analysis, it really made a lot of sense to reuse Magnolia House, just with some minor changes and actually trying to bring key historic elements back to the house. You couldn't see all the historic nature of the building.
The big open arch casement that goes into the stairwell and the two pocket doors, all of that was kind of hidden before. So the pocket doors were hidden inside the walls because we had put other things around them, and the archway leading to the stairs had like partitions hitting it. So now the foyer is kind of back into how it used to be.
We really look to keep that character, especially with the flooring. We protect it during demo, during construction, and at the end we refinish. Same with the stairwell. We basically built a protective box around the stairwell, and then at the end we restored it. Again, you can't completely match any historical brilliance with any new building materials. It's good.
This was a unique opportunity that we have an old building, the house, but then we put a brand new building on as an addition. In addition to this project, we had the carriage house, which was really underutilized, And for us, as we looked into the program and the needs of UCI, that offered for us the biggest space to have, the biggest meetings.
Creating that space with a new kitchenette and ADA bathrooms really presented a great opportunity, I think, for us, and it's gotten a lot of great use. And of course, since the original garage doors were long gone, we wanted to take the sort of plywood out of the openings and allow all of the natural light to flood that space, which it certainly does.
And so as we've taken over this building, our spaces have become these hubs of activity. So we've been able to open our doors in a way that we really couldn't before, and it's been dramatic and meaningful. Finding all of the ways that we were able to make this space adaptable and flexible to fit a variety of uses is really just a key success of the project. Thank you to the Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the Preservation Achievement Award.
The Award of Merit for Community Impact goes to the Painesville Tower.
I'm Jared Teeter with Renew Partners, and I was in charge of all financials of the project.
Josh Neese, I'm from Renew Partners, and I was on part of the development team for this project.
Dr. Jenny Kennard, and I'm the provost at Lake Erie College. I was involved more when we got the project complete and started moving students.
Mike Sandbury, I'm a historic preservation specialist at LDA Architects.
I'm Kaylin. I am an interior designer and historic preservationist on this project as well.
Carrie, and I'm also an interior designer on this project.
The project is located at 30 South Park Place in downtown Painesville. It's located on the city's main square in the commercial core near the Veterans Park, Painesville City Hall, and the Lake County Courthouse. It was originally constructed in 1957, and then the 5-story addition was constructed by a local firm, Rice and Stewart, in 1967.
We had been using some apartment buildings that were closer to campus, and we had been, number one, outgrowing that and needed some updated space for our students. And so as that lease was coming up and Sean approached the college about a possible partnership and revitalization of the square, it was exciting to think about new places for our students, the idea of the amenities that they would have down there, and just creating an opportunity for students to have something new, which we have not had on campus for a long time.
When we started this project, we didn't do a ton of exterior work. We did patch some mortar. There were some anchor points in the exterior stonework that had to be repatched and repaired. But overall, outside, we didn't do a significant amount of work. On the inside, we did work on the monumental mid-century staircase. We retained as much of it as possible. We found some historic photos of it from the day it opened. We did discover some of the original carpeting underneath many layers on the treads, but we opted for a more contemporary carpet color for the current design.
Mid-century does involve a lot of vibrant and lively colors and palettes, and I think mixing the warmth of some of the existing wood panels that we had to keep and integrating it with the monumental stair features, I think it still gives a contemporary feel that younger adults might enjoy.
There was a lot of work done with the architect to make sure that we could the best fit the purpose with the space we were already working with.
We were tasked with fitting a certain number of beds in the building, so that was probably one of the trickiest parts, to get that number where the school needed it, where the budget fit, and the building was able to fit that number. And so we did do some interesting things with units, and we turned a couple mostly undesirable spaces into the most desirable spaces. We turned the HVAC rooftop penthouse and turn that into probably the most desirable unit with, I think it's 7 beds and a walkout rooftop deck.
It's, sitting in a great spot right there on Painesville Square and bringing upwards of just over 170 beds there. So we're bringing all these new younger people. I think it's just really nice for the community to have this extra push of people. And it's really helping, I think, bring the square alive.
It allows for some of those additional relationships to foster and be built with additional businesses downtown. And I know the students appreciate those extra amenities, but then it also puts some guaranteed consumers into the local businesses.
Thank you to the Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the Award of Merit for Community Impact.
The Heritage Home Program Award goes to the Noble Miller Home.
Hi, I'm Jen Noble. My house is located in Ohio City. It was built in 1880 for Titus Ingram, who was the grand engineer for the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers. And when it was built, the home was a rather grand gabled Italianate with some stick-style influences. By 1960, which is the oldest photograph we have, its original arched double front doors and portico had been removed, and it had been covered with asbestos siding. In 1963, all of the Italianate details were stripped from the house. All of the original windows were taken out. Giant picture windows were put in. It was covered with aluminum siding and aluminum awnings. The next big renovation came in 2002. At that point, it was covered with vinyl siding. Vinyl windows were put in. Things that just did not belong on the house. The seller that we bought it from actually had that 1960 tax assessment photo framed in the hallway. And when I saw that photo, I knew, like, at some point my life mission was to bring this house back to what it was. But it seemed like an insurmountable mission. I looked at so many pictures of the Heritage Home Program projects, and I was like, other people have done this and they have survived, and it has been amazing. So we can do this too. So then we ripped off the vinyl siding. As suspected, most of the original clapboard was gone from the front of the house. Plywood was just there. So we went with hardy. But two of the amazing things we discovered is under the vinyl, there were these corner beads, like a round bead going down the sides, as well as this trim that just had the cutest little architectural detail on the bottom. And then when they ripped off the fake vinyl cedar stuff in the gable, we discovered amazing ghost marks on fascia board where there had been rosettes, and there was all this beautiful wood up there that had just been completely covered up in both gables, even the side gable. So I knew we were gonna keep that and restore it. And my husband and I, mostly my husband, I will give him credit there, painstakingly stripped all of the old paint off of it. We filled in hundreds and hundreds of nail holes. We sanded everything smooth, and then we rented a lift, a cherry picker lift that sat on our sidewalk for a little while, and we went up there and we primed everything and painted everything. And I had a wood carver that I found in Ukraine recreate from that ghost line carvings, rosette carvings that we put back. I think we had over 100 of them. Then they went down the side fascia board as well as in the gable. The gable had a different style, and then the sides had a different rosette. We didn't really have any challenges, just really wonderful surprises. And it was more the fear of going into it than anything. Working with the Heritage Home Program was great. Besides the financial benefits, it was just a wealth of information. I hope we've inspired other people to, see what's hiding under their vinyl siding or their aluminum siding, and just to bring back that Victorian charm, because that's irreplaceable and it just makes the neighborhood wonderful. Thank you to Cleveland Restoration Society for the Heritage Home Program Award.
The Superior Neighborhood Impact Award goes to the Trinity Block.
I am Frank Scalish, president of Scalish Construction and First City Development. We acted as developer and general contractor on the Trinity project.
Hi everyone, I'm Maria Scalish, CEO of Scalish Construction. And First City Properties, I was a support for Frank.
Hi, I'm Scott Dimmitt. I'm a principal with Dimmitt Architects, and we headed up the architectural and engineering team.
Heather Rudge, I'm with Historic Preservation Group, and our team, we were the historic consultants.
John Holtz, I work with Scott and Dominic Architects, and I was a project manager.
So the church was built in 1921. The architect was J.W. Cresswell Corbusier. The education wing was added in 1953. The architect was a firm called Ward and Conrad. And then building the Cleveland Bagel is now it was built in 1924. The builder was A.E. Hart.
Maria and I are both members of the Lakewood community, and I personally had driven by the Trinity site a countless amount of times, just noticing the vacancy and blight on this street corner for such a long time piqued my interest in the revitalization of the Trinity block. When we purchased the project, we inherited multiple years and multiple layers of unthoughtful construction, I guess, for lack of better words. The exterior, I guess I would call a restoration. Everything was pretty much restored to its close to original condition, including the rebuilding of the front step, which were an abomination. Front stairs were falling apart. They were hazardous to the community. You couldn't walk on them. They were leaking into the front of the building, the basement, the entry to the church, and there were mold issues that we had to remediate. The list goes on. So I think that's the first thing that you see when you look at the site and you look at the property are those front stairs. And then we did a ton of masonry restoration work on the exterior, both the church and the storefront. We rebuilt most of the parapets on the storefront buildings. We rebuilt most all of the storefronts, replaced all the glass to original photos that HP Group had found. We also restored all of the stained glass windows in the church. So that was fun.
I think that what's really important about sort of Frank and Maria stepping in and getting this property is that Wendy's wanted to try to acquire the property, and they were trying to get in there and tear everything down and put another fast food restaurant in Lakewood. And I think the biggest challenge of the project was before it started, trying to get the city on board and make sure that we got this property into the hands of a developer that I knew could execute what needed to be done to save the buildings. You know, the commercial blocks and the education wing, they sort of went as projects normally do, but them having a vision of finding the right tenant for that space was critical.
It was really about the integration of them all working together. How can these tenants support each other? We wanted to make sure that this was going to be the best use for a Trinity block.
It's kind of become its own being, right? On a block that was pretty much stagnant. There was nothing here before this development. I can also say that from a development perspective, this project really would not have worked without the historic tax credit component.
But it needed to be deemed a historic area. And then they had to push the block back in order for Trinity block to be included within that historic. That was a critical piece to this puzzle, because without it, honestly, the project would have been very difficult to do.
I think this is a prime example of these programs actually working. Thank you to Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the Superior Neighborhood Impact Award.
The Superior Rehabilitation of an Industrial Building Award goes to Globe Iron.
My name is Jeff Farmer. I work for AEG Presents, and I am the general manager here at Globe Iron.
Justin Miller. I work for AEG Presents. I'm the vice president of operations for the Great Lakes and Promo West regions.
Jeff Russell. I work for JL Russell and Associates, and we were the general contractor for the project.
Kevin Galinsky. I work for AEG Presents. I'm the general manager at Jacobs Pavilion in Cleveland Agora. I helped out with the project with JL Russell.
Kristen Howard, I'm with LDA Architects, and I was a project designer on the project.
I am Jesse Swigert. I'm with LDA Architects. I was the project manager.
I'm Kaylin Millen. I work with LDA Architects, and I'm the interior designer and historic preservationist on this.
So the history of Globe Iron, that was the original name of that building. It was opened as Globe Iron. It was an ironworks and foundry in its original days. And then around the turn of the century, they converted into a shipyard and were building the first steel-hulled freighters to ever sail the Great Lakes. We decided to restore and adapt to the use of Globe Iron, primarily because we love old venues. We can build a black box for probably cheaper in every market, but there's no history, there's no nuance, there's no subtlety to that.
It's really a beautiful building inside and out, and we kind of want to make sure that we emphasize the history of it. Early in the process, all the exterior masonry was painted. I think JL Russell kind of painstakingly tried to find the right contractor to remove the paint without damaging the brick. And then we did a lot of retuck pointing on the outside as well. We restored a lot of the interior masonry. There's a lot of large arched openings throughout the project that we made sure to maintain and emphasize in the design.
Leaning into some of those architectural details, the massive wooden beams that were originally put in to haul around all of the giant metal pieces that they were manufacturing in the foundry and then later the shipyard. So we've used those beams. We've hung some of our sound equipment and light equipment hangs from those beams.
As a concert venue, you have all the bright lights from the show, and when you're in the space, your eye attracts to the brick detailing and the beams that are above. The lighting really draws your attention to those spaces.
Something a little bit unique about Globe Iron is that even though it's typically used as a large general admission open floor space, there's a lot of unique alcoves and smaller spaces built into the design. And so it was great watching how people liked to use all of the different bars and the VIP space and how they really filled up the space, and everybody had something in there that made them feel comfortable and helped them enjoy the show.
Something that has just been absolutely awesome and has become my favorite part of Globe is our outdoor courtyard. Not very common in venues this size, and it's really the cherry on top.
The courtyard is nice and cozy. You feel comfortable in that space, but then you just get this kind of sweeping view of the skyline, the bridge, and kind of everything that is Cleveland is kind of right there in that little tiny courtyard, and it's just soak it in.
Every little bit of activation in that area helps for the area to feel welcoming and safer. And just the inclusion of the courtyard and the outdoor spaces really helps that area come alive, and also improves the area for the people that live there so that they can feel like they are living in a thriving location.
Justin had said to me, he said, you know, what you're building is a place where some father's going to take his son to his first concert. Husband and wives are going to meet there. Friends are going to get together, and people are going to come to this place and have a great time, and they're just going to share. It's a place of sharing, and there's just so many little parts of it that are just great.
The opportunity to save a building from the 1800s, we get a few of those opportunities in our career, and we're taking every one we can get our hands on.
Thank you to the Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the reward for superior rehabilitation of an industrial building. Thank you for the recognition, and it is a pleasure to show off the building to everybody.
The Outstanding Storefront Restoration Award goes to Record Rendezvous.
Ian Jones with Avid Architects. So we were the architect for the project.
Denon Hubbard, I was also with Avid Architects, and I was the architectural designer associated with the project.
Alex Hickey, Richardson Design. We were in charge of the interior design, branding, and signage for the project.
My name is Diana Wellman. I'm with Naylor Wellman. We are preservation consultants, and that was our role with this. So the building was built in 1908. It was originally built as an addition to the Journal Herald, which is the building to the east of this building. And it served for the Herald till about 1929. And then in 1945, Leo Mintz bought the building to house Record Rendezvous. He was purchasing 45s that were rhythm and blues. In 1951, he gets introduced to Alan Freed, which was part of a local radio station. Alan Freed is known for coining the word rock and roll. And they had what is considered the very first rock and roll concert. It was called the Moondog Coronation Ball, and it was held in 1952. This is probably one of the most important rock and roll locations in the country.
This project served twofold. It was perfect for a cannabis dispensary location, but also had this historical aspect to it that overlaps with cannabis from a cultural standpoint. It was kind of both of those things, I think, that drew them to the property.
So historically, the building had been fairly vacant. The upper floors were essentially warehouses. So the interior of the building really doesn't have a lot of character to it. Where the essence of the store is in the display window. So we have this famous picture of Leo Mintz, probably around 1950, standing in front of his storefront. And the storefront is so classic, 1945. Has vitrolite panning, it has curved storefronts. And what was left of that historic storefront was those curved storefronts and the record Rendezvous terrazzo floor at the entry. Yeah, when we first were looking at the building, the dirt was so heavy on the terrazzo, we actually didn't think the terrazzo was there. We thought what we were looking at was that the metal that holds the name Record Rendezvous had been removed, and we were just seeing the shadow line of the words. That's how filthy the stone was. But back to the storefront, what we really had was the basics of the curve. The aluminum is the historic aluminum. And so we just replaced the glass. The vitrolite had been removed a long time ago. There was literally stick-on brick, probably from the 80s, that was kind of a green tile. And at first glance, you think, oh, that looks like that could be historic. But it wasn't. It was just like a glue-on stick. The team went out and they found a tile that gave like a matte-like finish, could be cut. And if you look closely at that curved storefront, you can't just take a big piece of tile and make it span that curve. So when you look at that storefront overall, you kind of have some different size panels to make the storefront complete.
There were various renditions of what this exterior looked like. The most iconic is this illuminated neon sign with record Rendezvous with these kind of dancing neon musical notes in between. This was really the one that felt like it fit the architecture best. This seemed like it fit the heyday of the building and matched that original kind of Moondog Coronation Ball era the best. So we showed them this image to show how their brand could fit the storefront and match it as closely as possible and keep the spirit of the original building. They were extremely diligent from there on out to do whatever it took to make this happen.
I think the sign and storefront have started to become a little bit of a landmark in itself.
The store beyond continued that historic theme of Record Rendezvous. So there's consoles and vinyl records on the wall, and it's just a fabulous space on the interior as well. They took a building that was historic and they really took that theme of rock and roll and put it into every little inch of the storeroom and the display window. Thank you to the Cleveland Restoration Society and the AIA Cleveland for the Outstanding Storefront Restoration Award.
The Outstanding Retrofit of a Historic Structure Award goes to Fidelity Hotel.
My name is Diana Wellman. I'm with Naylor Wellman Consulting. We do historic preservation, and we were the preservation consultants on this team, on this project.
Hi, my name is Paul Alessandro. I'm a partner with Hartshorn and Pluckert Architecture, and we were the architects on the Fidelity project.
Hi, my name is Eric Conrad. I'm the general manager of the Fidelity Hotel, representing New Waterloo Hotels, and I'm the operator here at the hotel.
The building was built in 1920. It's a neoclassical 11-story building designed by George Greibel. He's a Cleveland architect. The building was built for Paul Brothers. They were a real estate development team. Their main tenant was Fidelity Mortgage and Guaranty Company. They were in that building well into the 90s. The building was occupied on the first floor by commercial tenants pretty much consistently. The interior of the building had pretty much changed over time with not a lot of interior historic fabric remaining, simply just because of turnover of office tenants.
So one of the challenges you run into with these buildings that have been restored or adapted or modified over time is trying to get to what is intrinsically the form that the building wants to be. By restoring the main entrance and the stonework that had been covered over, we created a main focal point for the facade. Also, it created a new pathway into the building that allowed us to utilize all of the storefront as part of our lobby.
The storefronts, as they head towards Superior, step down as we head towards the lake. So at the front of the building, in the lobby, you kind of go through these portals that step down, and it really kind of creates like a sense of moving through space. But then on the back side of the main restaurant lobby is this nice long ramp that makes it very easy and accessible for ADA, but at the same time, they turned that into a gallery.
We worked with approximately about 30 local artists. To bring the local artists in was a no-brainer. Cleveland is abundant with artists and talent. Since we've opened, it's been a pretty unique feature to see guests walk up and down that wall and look at all the different pieces there and really see different Easter eggs in Cleveland located in there and all different kinds of things that represent the history of the hotel and the city. It's been a very unique spot. We thought the building deserved rich textures, rich colors in the inside. We didn't want just the interior to feel 2025, where the interior was begging to feel like it needed to be connected to the history. And I think the interior design did a very good job doing that. Very excited about the artwork and the design that's represented here.
The building set back above the third floor and became a rectangular footprint. That was the limiting factor in terms of fitting guest rooms into the hotel. And one of the things we had to do was let the seams out of the building a little bit. And we took the back of the building off, leaving the structure. We hung additional structure off the back within that light well, which expanded those rectangular floors to get a bigger footprint that allowed us to line both sides of a central corridor with guest rooms.
Hotels are very hard to finance. So this was all private equity, taking a risk on a hotel in downtown Cleveland, but I think it's paid off. The hotel received a Michelin key. It's the only one in the state of Ohio. It's not another white cookie cutter, name the hotel, right? This is completely a unique experience.
We believe hotels are unique in the sense that they have the biggest ability to make an impact, more so than even a standalone restaurant or an apartment building or an office building. We are open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We are on the footsteps of everybody down here at all times. We want guests to wake up and know they're in Cleveland and have that local feel. It's something we're very proud of, and it's something we continue to do. Thank you so much to the Cleveland Restoration Society and the AIA Cleveland for the Outstanding Retrofit of a Historic Structure Award.
The award of excellence for facade restoration goes to the Weizer building.
I'm Natalie Leak. I'm president and CEO of Providence House, and I am the property owner.
I'm Michael Werner. I'm with ED DeFrancisco and Siebold Architects. I was the project architect.
Greg Frost. I own Frost Architectural Preservation, and I was the primary exterior facade restoration contractor.
Mike Mooney. I'm a current board member with Providence House, and I was with the Albert M. Higley Company, the construction manager, general contractor on the renovation projects.
Rob Garuccio. I've been working with Providence House over the last 7 to 8 years or across various projects, including this one. Many of the projects I held the role of project manager.
Brett Wasson, I was the project superintendent on the Providence House project.
So a little history on the property. So it's located at the northeast corner of East 118th and Buckeye Street. It was built in 1925 with very ornate terracotta facades on the two street-facing facades. When it was originally built, it housed the Central National Bank. On the second floor were the offices for John Weizer, for whom the building's named and who owned the building. Once the area, kind of the Hungarian residents and business started leaving the neighborhood, and obviously the building fell into disinvestment and became unoccupied. Somewhere around the early 2000s, the building was then occupied by Beechcroft and Beechbrook, And when they did that, they actually had put on a 3-story addition to the north elevation of the building. Providence House took it over, I think, about 6 years after Beechcroft left.
Providence House is a crisis nursery. We're actually Ohio's first licensed crisis nursery. In fact, now the largest residential crisis nursery in North America. What brought us over to Buckeye was the growing waiting list for children whose families were in crisis that needed safe shelter for their children. So we worked with a number of partners to tour properties. And the minute we pulled up to the Weizer building, I knew. I was like, we just found our new home.
It is a beautiful terracotta building, and the entire 2 street facades are fully clad in terracotta. The terracotta had been neglected, and a lot of the glaze had spalled off, freeze-thaw conditions and water intrusion. So it really took a significant amount of repointing and patching, and then of course having to paint the patches to have them look like the original. It was a 3 or 4 layer process to try to get those paint colors to match and blend with the patterns of what was there.
There's a pretty extensive process with mock-ups for that terracotta stone that ultimately we went through probably close to a dozen various mock-ups before we found the correct one. And I don't know that it would even be visible now if you were to go look at the building, that there is repairs made.
On the first floor, the original bank windows were very large plate glass windows. It didn't really suit the need of the building going forward, and yet we wanted to maintain the historic feel of the building. Working with HDS architects, we came up with the design of removing the large plate glass windows and replicating those 3-paneled window systems, but we had to replicate them exactly. We basically rebuilt all of the window openings on the first floor so that they would accept Pella windows. That was really the biggest obstacle. The rest of the project really was a pretty good-sized masonry restoration project.
You know, obviously, myself, Rob, and Brett were involved when the shovel goes in the ground, but on the board, I was involved years and years ago. You know, this was something that it takes a lot of effort, especially when you're raising money, to get to a point where you can actually get a shovel in the ground. So this project is the culmination of years and years of research and funding and a tremendous amount of effort to get this east side in actual reality.
Thank you to Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the Award of Excellence for Facade Restoration.
The Award of Distinction for Restoration and Rehabilitation goes to Oviatt House, Inc.
I'm Tricia Steiner, president of Oviatt House at Richfield Heritage Preserve.
I'm Anita Gantner. I am the chair of the board of the Richfield Heritage Preserve.
Hi, I'm Judy Bowman, and I am the former president of Oviatt House Incorporated.
I'm Larry Brahacek, and I was one that originally started to save the house. My friend Ken, also involved.
I'm Meg Slivkak, and I'm a former board member of the Richfield Joint Recreation District and was the initial supporter from the board for this project.
I am on the board of the Oviatt House. I've been on the board since the beginning.
I'm Karen Hooper. I have been involved since the beginning, mostly as a volunteer, and I've been on the museum committee before.
I'm Kathy Burlow, and I am currently on the board and serve as secretary.
Hi, I'm Janice Radel, and I'm a member of the Museum Development Committee.
I'm John Pepsley. I'm the park director at the Richfield Heritage Preserve, and I do a lot of work with Tricia and the Oviatt group.
I'm Mark Parker. I'm the newest Oviatt board member.
So Oviatt House was built in 1836 and is part of the Richfield Heritage Preserve, located in Richfield, Ohio, which is owned and governed by the Richfield Joint Recreation District. What makes Oviatt House special historically is that it was the home of Mason and Fanny Oviatt, who were not only some of the first white migrants to settle in Richfield as part of the Connecticut Western Reserve, but were also participants in the abolition movement and worked together with the famous abolitionist John Brown to help enslaved people seeking freedom as part of the Underground Railroad.
We discovered the house was going to be razed. It was in the local paper, and Ken and Larry went to the house, realized it was much older than what was portrayed. So I worked with Paul Swan, who's the president of the Richfield Historical Society, and we founded the Oviatt House nonprofit. And the Richfield Historical Society and other members of the community were able to gather community support. And because Larry Rahacek and Ken Bowman had his restoration expertise to make the project possible, we were pretty confident we could go forward with the restoration project.
The initial fundraising phase that this project received, it had an incredible outpouring of support. It was amazing. The Richfield Historical Society was a leader. They took very precious resources and dedicated it to our fundraising goals. The Richfield Town Trust, they modified their bylaws so that they could support our project. Richfield residents were donating thousands and thousands of dollars. It was unheard of. The support just came from all over.
With doing the restoration, we tried to reproduce and copy every piece as it originally was made. Not that we use the same hand tools, but we looked at each piece and just the discovery of finding all this information out. And through the process, I'm still finding a new technique or that they use to fabricate pieces or to actually put the house together with just simple, basic hand tools for the most part.
And what I think was amazing, that the majority of the work was done by volunteers. The only work that we had to contract out was the roof, because we couldn't have volunteers do that job. And also the tuck pointing that was done on the foundation and restoration of the original chimney. But everything else, the siding, the painting, the gutting of the house, the cleaning, which it was pretty smelly and disgusting when we got in there, all of that was done. And I believe we have over 5,000 volunteer hours on the house.
Yeah, the volunteers were probably, from my point of view and Judy's point of view, and I can't speak for everybody else, the best part of this project. I met so many great people from so many different walks of life, and that I never would have met without it. And it was such a challenge and so much fun to keep them busy. You know, I didn't want to insult somebody that was really good carpenter and give them a broom, and I didn't want to give a circular saw to somebody that never picked up a circular saw. It was so much fun. We were cranking the tunes and we were working, and you know, it was so much time where you couldn't see a whole lot of progress, and then all of a sudden we're putting stuff back together again, doing like a jigsaw puzzle, figuring out where the original walls were and where the original staircase was and where the original fireplace was, and I got to work with so many great people doing that.
Thank you. The Cleveland Restoration Society and AII Cleveland for the Award of Distinction for Restoration and Rehabilitation.
The Award of Distinction for the Preservation of Cultural Landmarks goes to the Sandusky Library, Erie County Jail, and Follett House.
Hello, my name is Molly Carver. I was executive director at Sandusky Library during the course of the project.
Matt Sibla, vice president with Kuhn Restoration. I was the PM and estimator for the project.
Greg Frost, and I own Frost Architectural Preservation, and I was the masonry restoration consultant for the exterior project.
I'm Kevin Kennedy with HBM Architects. I was the project manager for the project.
Aaron Spencer, and I was the field foreman for Kuhn Restoration, and I overseen all the work on the masonry.
Tom Trolson, president of Forest Historical and Specialty Roofing Company. We were the roofing contractors for the project.
Sandusky Library, which now includes the former Erie County Jail and the Follett House Museum, are located in downtown Sandusky. All three buildings are within 2 blocks of each other along Adams Street. The library was built in 1901. It was the very first Carnegie library built in the state of Ohio. The Follett House Museum came to be owned by the library in 1976. Well, when I got to the library as director in 2015, we knew that large maintenance projects had been deferred. And I always think it's more cost effective to invest in the property up front than it is to try to maintain things after shortcuts have been taken.
We got very specific and very deep in fixes to issues that we were discovering in a way that wouldn't affect the historical context of the building. The rope joints that were originally on these structures that had mostly disintegrated were really a focus on how are we going to do this, and even put a joint on a building that architects are taught in college not to use because it's not a water shedding joint. So that's where we kind of came in and worked with Greg on how to put all that together.
There are a lot of buildings in Sandusky that use rope joints. It was actually a decorative technique, and it was a way of expressing your wealth because it took more money to apply that kind of joint. So we did feel it was very important to replicate that.
Being in the Bricklayers Union, I had to go to school for 4 years, and the school that we go to is called IMI. We touched on it a little bit, so we did learn it. Obviously not to a scale that we did with that library, but it gave us a good handle on things, and when we brought other guys in to help, they got a pretty good grasp on it.
This was one total project, one contract, but we basically were working on 3 different buildings. So different cleaning samples, different mortar samples. Every building had its own ins and outs and things that we had to work for with the details. When you clean these buildings, because that's always the first thing we do is like to clean these buildings, right? Because you're trying to match clean mortars and clean stone and clean brick, whatever it may be. But to see what it looks like afterwards and see people just stop and talk to you about it, because they could be 80 years old and that building's never looked like that to them.
We were tasked with now not, replacing the roofs. And that's nice to know that, hey, we get to make sure that it's going to last another 100+ years and, be able to continue to be a staple in the community and look the way it does. And having to take each individual heavy tile down and set it in a nice stacked order and then replace all the underlayment, replace all the copper flashings, and then go ahead and get that tile back up to the roof area. That was probably our biggest challenge. It's just a labor of love. Seagulls were also our biggest challenge in the project. You don't understand how hard it is to clean seagull crap off of tile. It's harder than you think. And that roof is very, very unique in terms of like the color and the style of the front, and just to have it look like that and be able to keep it like that. It's supposed to look exactly the same. Nobody should even know you're there. Which means if you do that correctly, reusing the tile, you've done a good job.
The community has been very happy about the restoration. Every day people tell me about how pleased they are that we took the care of these buildings. And by participating in a project of this magnitude, we're fulfilling kind of a multi-generational contract, not in words, but in stone. We were gifted with this, and it's our legacy, and it's also our debt that we owe to the future. We thank the Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the award of distinction for the preservation of cultural landmarks. Receiving recognition from 2 organizations that truly understand and appreciate the magnitude and the significance of the project is especially gratifying, and we're humbled that they found our project worthy of recognition.
The Award of Excellence for the Restoration of a Historic Feature and AIA Craftsmanship Award goes to Shiloh Baptist Church.
I'm Reverend Dr. Lisa Maxine Goods. I'm the senior pastor of Shiloh Baptist Church.
Hi, I'm Janet Libstrew. I'm with Whitney Stained Glass Studios. I'm the general operations director for the studio, and we were chosen to work on their beautiful windows at Shiloh.
Greg Frost. I am president and owner of Frost Architectural Preservation and was very proud to be a part of this project doing interior plaster repairs.
Shiloh is the oldest Black Baptist church in the city of Cleveland. We were founded in 1849. Our building was built in 1906. It was originally built as B'nai Hesheron congregation, and in 1926 we moved into the building, so it makes it a very beautiful vision of our shared humanity and our shared culture. In 2020, Shiloh called me to be the pastorate at Shiloh Baptist Church, but it wasn't until later that I really got to walk around and see the deterioration in the building. So we have this iconic stained glass dome that covers about 80% of our sanctuary. In fact, our custodians found at 2 different times pieces of glass on the floor, as well as there was a lot of water damage. We used to have to cover our pulpit, our furniture, our altar, because plaster would fall from the ceiling. And so I called the Restoration Society's Sacred Landmarks, and they did one of their amazing building assessment reports on all of the various areas of our building. And while we had found that glass, we didn't know the instability of the dome. We were at risk of safety hazards of having people seated beneath there. There was the potential that we might have to leave that building, and also that would mean abandoning many of the services that we do provide to our neighbors there.
Because of the condition of the dome, there was significant amount of bowing or deflection going on, which probably caused some of those pieces to fall out. A lot of the main support had been lost in the bars, and we were able to come in and determine that we could pull the panels, completely re-lead them, and then they would be able to go in back into the original frame. There were 100 panels, so first we had to designate and keep track of all those individual panels so they would go back in the right place, and then brought them in to the studio and would do rubbings of the panels so that we could then put them back together again and knew where every piece of glass went. The hardest part is actually trying to match the glass, getting just the color right, but not only the color, the texture of the glass as well. So in our process, we try to keep as much of the original material as possible. We don't want to replace if we don't have to. In some cases, we did some minor repairs to the glass that are traditional, copper foiling technique, those kinds of things. But then we also had to come up with some glass that was missing. The teamwork that was done was really wonderful. I mean, having 100 panels is quite significant, and keeping track of those, even down to one little teeny piece of glass, is phenomenal. For a 120-year-old dome ceiling, it's got at least another 120 years probably left in it. So we're pretty excited that it's gone back in.
You don't want to have this jewel of a beautiful stained glass dome there and have a really ugly section of wall right next to it. So it only made sense that when the scaffolding was up to do the stained glass work, that our company came in on and we restored all of the plaster around the ring that surrounds the dome. And we repainted all of that. There was some nice trim up there that we used gold leaf paint on. There was a couple of sections of wall up near the altar that large sections of plaster were really bad. It was down to the tile wall or the block wall. And so we built additional scaffold and plastered the walls and repainted them, and a nice corner section of the ceiling. I'm real proud of how it all came out.
I like to say we are small but mighty. We do a lot of work in the community. The building has been used for concerts and fundraising and all of those type of things to benefit not only the church but the community. If we were not able to inhabit the building and had to relocate, all of that would cease. I want to say thank you to the Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the Award of Excellence for the restoration of a historic feature and the AIA Craftsmanship Award.
The Distinguished Restoration and Adaptive Use Award goes to the Bulkley Building.
Hi there, my name is Tom Einhaus, and in my previous role at Playhouse Square, I was the owner's representative on the Bulkley Building project.
I'm Melissa Spires. I'm with Berardi Partners, and we were the architects on the project. I was the project manager.
My name's Matt Large. I'm with John G. Johnson Construction. We were the construction manager for the project.
I'm Angie Jenkins, and I was facility and capital project coordinator for Playhouse Square.
The building was built in 1921, and it was originally an office building. So really floors 3 through 9.5 were all office. Floor 2 was all retail. Floor 1 was all retail. And the lower level, or the basement, was a cafeteria. A lot of those downtown buildings had cafeterias in the basement. So Playhouse Square's ownership of the building began roughly 1999, 2000. And we had primarily maintained it as an office building. So Playhouse Square's offices were on the entire second floor, and the upper floors were a variety of tenants. Their lease concluded around 2020. And we started looking at first how to use the building as a traditional office building. And we were finding it very difficult to compete with those Class A buildings. The idea was put on the table to convert floors 4 through 7, which were primarily occupied by Gallagher Sharp, into residential.
In my opinion, as the architectural group, our biggest challenge was fitting the units into the floor plate and all the existing conditions that we had. There were 21 units per floor, and each one was a different layout. So there was 21 different units on every floor. So there's not a lot of repetition in that building, except for the stacks, and that didn't even work all the time.
In the meantime, we're also looking at the other parts of the building that were in great need of work, right? And it was discovered that the entire facade needed a significant amount of work. We had to completely replace half of the cornice on the east side of the facade and repin all of the masonry down the front of the building, as well as work around the back of the building, etc. So all in all, that whole project on the exterior of the building was about $6.5 million. So we've got the facade, we've got the 4th floor, 4th through 7, and we were also in negotiations with Dixon Eaton to take an extended lease on the 8th and 9th floor. So there's a partial 9th floor above the 8th floor. We execute a lease with them, and they had brought in Whiting Turner, and their architect was DVA Architects. So now we've got JGJ Berardi, we got DVA and Whiting Turner, and then we have on the outside of the building WR Restoration and Technical Assurance. Kone is working with Melissa, working on interiors for the cabs, plus all the architectural drawings that were needed for submission. Come down to the 1st floor, and we're in the process of doing 2 retail bays for the Bulkley Bar and Brasserie. So now we've got Turner Construction and Richardson Design doing that. One heck of a lot of stuff going on at the same time. I will tell you some of the really cool things about this experience was JGJ having the biggest piece of it, which was the residential, took on the task of coordinating all the day-to-day activities of ingress into the buildings, working closely with Angie and Carl Dettelbach. And every day there was just one heck of a lot of construction happening simultaneously.
We're working in the 2nd largest theater district in the United States. We had tenants, occupied tenants below us, and then we had the patrons coming to the shows at nighttime. So really, we spent a lot of time trying to understand how we can access the building to allow work to occur and not hinder any of the pedestrian to the shows. It took a lot of hands to get that figured out.
All in all, in that probably 18 to 24 month period, that building had more work done to it than at any point in its life since it was first built. So it was really a major overhaul. Special thank you to the Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the Distinguished Restoration and Adaptive Use Award.
Congratulations once again to all our winners. If you enjoyed tonight's program, please consider becoming a member Learn more online about the benefits, including our free behind-the-scenes Snoop tours at clevelandrestoration.org. If you would like to play a larger role in preserving, protecting, and celebrating Cleveland's historic buildings and places, please consider donating to the Cleveland Restoration Society's annual fund. Your gift makes our programs and events possible. And be on the lookout for more information about the AIA Cleveland Design Awards to be held this year in November. With over 500 attendees on a regular basis, this event is one of the largest to recognize architectural and interior design excellence in Cleveland and Northeast Ohio. Thank you again for joining us at the 2026 Celebration of Preservation Awards. It was wonderful to celebrate with you all.